I just want to welcome everybody for joining us, and hopefully we have some good information here and about some wildlife recovery efforts, ideas, and all that. So Jeremy's going to go over a couple items, and then we'll get into that. So go ahead,
Great.
Jeremy.
Oh, great. Thanks, Michael, and thanks everyone for joining. And we tried the webinar format today because we weren't sure how many people were going to join. So hopefully that works for everyone. Although we do definitely want participation, so use the chat function with questions and comments. And Kelly Barker is going to be monitoring that and making sure that we respond to those. So I'm going to kick off just with a little bit of information. Update on some numbers related to the impacts of the fires, and then talk about some of the relief efforts that NAR and OAR and local associations are undertaking. And then we will have a discussion with Ellie Rosebush, who's the AE for the Oroville Association of Realtors in California, to talk about her experience and the association's experience helping their community recover from the Paradise, the campfires that destroyed much of Paradise, California in 2018. So I want to pull up a presentation. Can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I am hearing a little bit of feedback from somebody, kind of a squeaky noise. Okay. So this morning I just went on to the Oregon Office of Emergency Management Wildfire website to see what the latest numbers and information were related to the fires. So what you can see here, 9 confirmed fatalities, 5 missing persons. The Red Cross is reporting 2,526 people sheltered either in congregate shelter or non-congregate shelter. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is reporting just under 3,400 people who've applied for FEMA assistance so far. Around 1 million acres burned, about 2,268 residences destroyed that have been counted so far. 1,556 other structures destroyed. 10 fires still active all across the state. And the latest information on these fires if you go to wildfire.oregon.gov, all this information that I pulled is there. They have information related to the containment level, as well as the deaths, missing persons, and structures impacted for each of the fires. So that information, and it's updated daily. So encourage you to take a look at that. So obviously this has been just an awful, devastating experience for many families, individuals, businesses, and the whole state. So I want to talk a little bit about what some efforts that have been set up through the Realtor associations to help. So quickly after the fires broke out, OAR applied for a grant from the Realtors Relief Foundation through NAR, and we were awarded $500,000. And the information about how to, for individuals that want to apply for that assistance is on the OAR website. And what it's for is for full-time residents and U.S. citizens or legally admitted U.S. residents who have lost their home due to the wildfires. And there are grants available up to $1,000 per applicant to be used for rent on a new residence. So if they're renting a property while their home is being repaired or replaced, or to pay the mortgage for their destroyed residence. It really can only be used for those 2 purposes, so it's somewhat limited in that respect. It can't be used for hotels, for example, or emergency short-term shelter. It only works for people who are paying rent for a home that they're staying in, or the mortgage of their existing resident, or their residence that was destroyed. So we're managing the grant and applications for this. As I mentioned, more information is available on the website. If you go to our homepage, you'll see a big thing pop up right there on the homepage. Click on it. That takes you to all the information that we have about wildfires and wildfire recovery. And if you have any questions about this grant or the other one that I'm about to talk about, please put those in the chat, and we'll pause and answer questions about those. We also set up a fund directly through the Home Foundation, the Wildfire Relief Fund, and this fund, donations come to the OAR Home Foundation, and they can be for statewide wildfire relief or locally designated to a particular community that's been impacted. These grants, the idea with this fund is that the grants are advertised and applications are received and reviewed by the local boards and associations in the areas where people have been impacted by the fires. And then those local associations will forward funding recommendations to the OAR Home Foundation, and the OAR Home Foundation Board of Directors will make a final decision on those. And these are up to $1,500 per applicant that can be used for emergency needs related to being displaced from the home due to fires. So this is more flexible than the previous one I mentioned. A person or family who was evacuated but their home was not destroyed could apply for this. If they need money for emergency shelter or hotel, they could apply for this. If they need other emergency food, daycare, other needs that are related to them being displaced from their home, they could apply for this. OAR sent all the instructions related to this fund to the AEs, and then, as I mentioned, the local associations are responsible for advertising and taking applications locally for these. But we really, really need donations for this fund, and those donations can come from anybody. You don't have to be from a community that's impacted. So if you go to the OAR website and donate to the Home Foundation, there's a drop-down menu, and you can select either the State Wildfire Relief Fund or a local community and donate, and then those funds can be used for this purpose. And the state fund can help go to any of those communities. And so if a particular community has a lot of applications and more demand, then there is resources available, then that state fund can help with that. And we are expecting there to be quite a bit more demand than funds that are available. So I do really encourage you to consider a donation and consider encouraging others to donate to this.
Jeremy,
Erica, did you want to say something? Yeah.
We have some questions in chat.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to read those to you, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we had any grant applications come in yet?
Yes, we have had grant applications come in for both funds. And actually, Kelly, you might want to switch Erica to presenter mode if you can, because she's been the one taking the lead on reviewing those.
Okay.
And she might have some things to add. But yeah, we've had grant applications come in for both funds and are being reviewed. And I think some have been distributed even. Was there any other questions?
Yes. What if they own their property free and clear?
Well, oh, sorry, Erica, were you going to jump in?
No, it's okay. Do you want me to?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so great question. If they own their property free and clear and they're not required to pay a mortgage and they don't fall within that portion of the constraints of this grant, if they are paying rent somewhere while they're displaced because their home is lost, then this grant will cover that rent that they're paying now.
Okay.
And we've had many applications coming through. The inbox has got 50 new applications in it today. We have paid out $13,000 so far from the national fund, and we're in the process of approving the first round of home foundation applications that came in today as well. We've got 6 of those so far, with many, many more coming.
Okay.
RV space, if you're paying rent, I would recommend submitting an application for that. Yeah.
What about if it's a second residence or vacation home? Is the grant available for that purpose?
No, it is only available for primary residents.
That's all that's there so far.
Okay, great. Yeah, great questions. And I just want to take a moment actually to thank Erica and I'm not sure if Jenny is on, but Jenny and really the whole staff who just really shifted quickly to helping to put together these applications to get the national funding and then the OAR grant, and then is now focused on reviewing those applications and getting the money out the door as quickly as possible. So Erica, thank you, and Jenny and others that lead this effort, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're glad to be able to do something to help the community. There was a question about how does this work with insurance payouts? This is the way this grant is written. All checks that are sent and made payable to both the mortgage company and the applicant, or both the landlord of their new dwelling and the applicant. So I'm not sure how that works in terms of insurance payout, but the funding does go directly to their mortgage holder or their landlord.
You know, on both applications, I think on both applications for the NAR funds as well as the state funds, that there's a question on there about whether or not the expense that's being requested, the funding for, is covered by insurance, and then there's limitations on the ability to get the funds if it's covered by insurance already.
Yes. Yeah.
So I mentioned really one of the best ways that you can support this effort is to contribute to the state wildfire relief fund or to one of the individual community funds that are set up underneath that. And if you go, as I mentioned, you go to the website and the Home Foundation, there's a drop down menu on the when you donate, and you can select to dedicate it to the Wildfire Relief Fund or a particular community. And so we hope that you'll consider doing that, and that even local associations, even that aren't impacted, if you want to, encourage your members to contribute to those funds so that people who are impacted can get the help that they need, that would be wonderful. Other ways to contribute, you can also make a contribution to the NAR Realtor Relief Fund to replenish funds that they give out, because they continually fundraise for that fund so that they can keep giving to the next disaster. Also, of course, other organizations like Red Cross, Salvation Army are doing a tremendous amount of work to help place individuals in temporary housing and provide them with food, clothing, and other basic needs. And of course, there are also a lot of local community efforts. We have on our website, we're keeping track of some of those. So in addition to learning about how to donate to the Realtor Association funds, you can learn more about some of these other efforts and what's going on in counties on our website. And then I also really encourage you to visit wildfire.oregon.gov because there, as I mentioned before, you not only can get updates on what's going on with the fires and their impacts on lives and structures, but also a lot of information about FEMA assistance and how people apply for that, other volunteer assistance is needed. They even have a thing on that site that you can put in what you have available to contribute, and it sort of can match you up with where needs are. So and that site's updated regularly and is managed by the state. So encourage you to continue to check that out. Okay, so that's a summary of the efforts going on through NAR and OAR, and then we're going to shift to a conversation about sort of thinking through how realtors and realtor associations can support recovery efforts at the community-wide level in terms of rebuilding communities and thinking through that. But first, are there any additional questions on these funds or individual donation issues? Okay, great. So let me stop sharing and introduce Ellie Rosebush. As I mentioned, Ellie is the AE from the Oroville, California Association of Realtors. And we're going to talk today about their efforts helping their community and neighboring communities recover from the devastating Camp Fire that destroyed much of Paradise, California. So Ellie, before I get into some questions for you, anything you want to just say by way of introducing yourself? Oh, you're on mute.
Technical difficulty. There we go. Can you hear me now? First of all, I just want to say how sorry I am that Oregon's going through what California's been going through for the last several years. The first fire that I recall that was like this was in 2015 with Lake County. My husband's worked with CAL FIRE, and that was the first fire that he got called to that destroyed a community. And so ever since then, it's been an annual thing. We used to refer to this as Indian summer, the end of the summer season, and now everybody pretty much calls it fire season. So anyway, I'm sorry that you guys are going through that, and I hope whatever information that I can bring is helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I know that California is dealing currently with many fires right now, including some in your area. And so really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and help us learn from it. So maybe you can start by just taking us back to the day in 2018 when the fire struck your community and just how you learned that your town and your home were in danger and what happened that day.
Yeah, thank you. So, it's interesting because I've equated this to, every mom has a birth story. Well, every fire survivor has a fire story, and they're all very personal, and it's tragic, really, what happens to people that lose their homes. So I'll try to be brief with mine, but as I said, my husband's worked with CAL FIRE. So the night before the fire, it was a red flag warning day. It had been predicted to be a really bad period of time in our community because of the winds and because of the lines. We'd had problems with trees falling on lines before and that causing a problem. So the night before, we were anticipating that we were going to get electric turnoff. And it didn't happen. And with the wind and the pine needles, and where we lived in Paradise was very forested. And when we moved up there, we knew that. I wouldn't go home without half a tank of gas in my car. The area had been evacuated once in 2008 when we had a big fire that came through, also lightning caused. And so it wasn't surprising to us that we knew we lived in that kind of area. But the night passed, and the morning, it seemed like, the danger was gone. Nothing was mentioned. We watched the morning news like we normally would. And it wasn't until I stepped out on the front porch to leave for work that I looked up and I saw this, which you guys know well now. I called it a fire cloud, but those the smoke clouds that they almost look like they're on fire. They're bright pink, and it's just a very scary looking cloud if you've ever been through something like that. So I said to my husband, that does not look good. And he said, oh, there's a fire over in the canyon. It's over in Yankee Hill. It shouldn't be a problem for us. I left with that. And then I arrived in Oroville 30 minutes later, and they were evacuating Paradise, and Safeway was on fire. And Safeway was in the middle of town. The hospital sat right over on the ridge. It was the first thing that got hit. So perhaps, so when there's heavy winds and a fire starts like that because of lightning strikes, it might have happened like 2-3 weeks before. They could sit there for a long time and the winds come up and fan them, and all of a sudden they become clearly a problem. Well, this one was a PG&E pole that went bad, something. And when it started, the winds were already at 55 miles an hour. And so when the column of smoke started going up, which smoke will do, the wind knocked it right back down. And so that fire was spotting across the whole top of the mountain, which is where Paradise was, on that ridge. And so when spot fires come up like that, it's really quick. I mean, it doesn't take much at that time of year, as we know now. It's like this time of year, super dry. Doesn't take much to start it. So in a half an hour, it had already wiped out about half the town. For me, well, you'll be glad to know that I came into work that day because it was MLS tour day, and we don't miss MLS tour day. So I left my husband there to deal with the house, and I got over to our property, and that's when I was finding out that we're evacuated. During the day, we lost 85 people in the campfire. If it had happened in the middle of the night, there would have been a lot more deaths. And that's the really scary thing that still, for me, when we have fires like what we have going on right now, it's really hard to sleep through the night. Anyway, we lost these people, but all day long, I didn't know where my husband was. I knew where he'd be because he was at our property trying to protect it as best he could. That's, what he does. So, but I wasn't able to talk to him. And so throughout the day, we'd get messages of people dying on the skyway in their cars and cars bursting into flames and, just hideous, hideous stories. And at the end of the day, my husband did get to my office and we stayed at a friend's house, and which probably all too many of your people now know that feeling of waking up that morning following it, and you see the headlines and you just can't believe you're that person. We see it happen with hurricanes in the South and all those kinds of things, earthquakes, we've all seen those, play out on TV. It was just really different to wake up that morning and realizing that we were those people, personally, that we were those people that lost the house.
Well, I'm just still processing something that
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's one of those, like, you don't even know what to do. And just like for your communities, I'm sure your realtors are seeing the desperation in people like reaching out, trying to find rentals, trying to buy homes. If their insurance is kicking in, they've got cash in hand and the prices are going skyrocketing. And in our county, it's a very rural county. And with Paradise, there were 11,000 homes destroyed. So you multiply that times people in houses, although this was a senior community. So there were a lot of people that were displaced and really had nowhere to go. So they pretty much went down to Chico because it's just 15 minutes downhill, and that's where most people were evacuated from. And then there's only a couple of ways out from the Paradise Ridge that make any sense in that situation. And the other one was over to Oroville. So both communities got hit really hard for rental properties. And also there were a lot of people that were just right away just buying homes.
So you mentioned 12,000 homes. What was the extent of the damage to commercial structures in Paradise?
Fires are so interesting that way. Like, you can drive down Skyway's our main road. Like I said, it's a very small, very rural town, and had this Skyway was our main road into town from Chico, which is the most populous city in the area. And right along Skyway, there were quite a few businesses that made it, but there was more that didn't. And it would be really, it's one of those things where you want to say, that's not fair. Like, there were houses that, made it that you're thinking, how did that? Like, they had all these trees and all this other stuff going on. Like, my neighbors, they didn't lose their house, but they lost their barn. And it is just very interesting. The damage, well, the front page of the paper the next day was like, Paradise is gone. I mean, it couldn't have been more devastating.
So can you talk a little bit, I want to shift in a minute to the efforts that you did and your association did to help the community think through its rebuilding process and envisioning what it wants for rebuilding. But first, I just talked previously about some of the efforts that we set up to help individuals and families. Can you just talk a little bit about what role the realtors played and realtor associations played in helping people in that immediate aftermath of the fires?
Sure. So Chico Association of Realtors, it's actually the Sierra North Valley Association of Realtors. We're a county with 3 associations, so it's kind of crazy. But Chico was the biggest community by far, and that's where a lot of the people went, and they were feeling the impact of that really quickly. Plus, the fires last for a really long time, like you're experiencing now. Ours has been going for 2 weeks. So it stays on the forefront of everybody's mind, and they're hearing about the disasters, and people have been really generous. So we were getting a lot of gift cards from the members of the public, and then we had a North Valley North Valley community group that they were giving gift cards out. They were getting lots of donations and supplying gift cards. And so really quickly after people found out they lost their homes, there were people that were reaching out primarily to members, but then also the community. But the associations kind of focused on the members at first, and then got gift cards out to people when they could. Red Cross kicked in like really fast. So, but as far as like realtor associations, California Association of Realtors, it was, so I don't know how you guys do your state association meetings, but for us, we have to go online and do this hotel reservation thing and sign our people up. And it was that morning that the fire came through. So I was at my desk prepared to log on at 10 o'clock in the morning, but it was about, 9:30 when the MLS tour meeting wrapped up that I was back at my desk getting messages, and I sent a message through to my contact at CAR, said, I don't think we're going to be able to get on this morning. There's just way too much going on. And they immediately said, we've got help coming your way. So they were ready. They have a realtor relief program that they did, and they opened up to community members this time around. So, and then because, Paradise was such it wasn't the first, and it won't be the last, I'm afraid, but it was one of those that was so dramatic. It was like Santa Rosa, only it was the entire town, wiped off the mountain, and that 85 people were lost. That it got a lot of media attention from all over the place, so a lot of things were coming in, and that's so, for the people that have lost, everything, or even if they've been displaced from their homes, it was just so important. But the local associations were given gift cards, and then we were disseminating them to our members and then people of the community as time wore on. I mean, it went on for a really long time. Fire happened on November 8th, and by, I think, it was probably early spring that we were still like dealing with grants and people calling, asking for help and stuff. It went on a long time. Great.
Well, thanks for letting us know how that initial phase went. And then, do you want to talk now about the grant that you pursued from NAR and the event you put on and other efforts that you made related to of helping the community think about how to rebuild itself?
It all had to do with core standards. I got to admit from the beginning, as we were trying to figure out a way to help the community, and because we are a small association, I oftentimes call Hugh Morris at NAR and say, well, is there something that we can do? We've probably gotten 3 grants from NAR, small ones because we're a small association, but it helped put together a couple of Voice of Real Estate programs that we've done in the community, talking about growth and real estate in our area. And when this came up, our meetings are typically in October. We decided to pull this one up a bit. But we knew we wanted to do something. There's so much talk that goes on about, well, how do we streamline the building process? Because people pretty quickly start realizing they're either going to rebuild or they're going to move, one way or the other. They're doing something. And then you start hearing about the fees. People early on start talking about what can we do to streamline the process? Well, as an association, and especially as a very small association, how we impact that is going to be, we're very involved in our community. We have people that are on city council or that participate in city council meetings and on the planning commission. And we knew we wanted to do something along those lines. And so we reached out to Hugh again. And he said, how close are you to Sacramento? And I said, we're just like 70 miles up the road from Sacramento. And he said, because we just talked to this amazing woman, Kate Meese, the local governmental commission, and she did a article in the NAR magazine about smart growth and fire recovery. I can't remember exactly what the article entailed, but it quoted her, and he said to me, if you can get her to come speak to your association, we'll get you a grant. And so I contacted them. Their site was really interesting because what they're talking about is sustainable growth and smart growth, like when it comes to transportation patterns and mixed use, high density mixed use kinds of programs. And so at that point in time, we weren't really sure what we would be able to do. We're just like going to have our regular event where we would invite our local chamber members. But after talking to that group, we reached out to the other planning commissions, the other city councils, the other associations specifically in the beginning, telling them that we were having this woman come speak, and she was like a world-class speaker and that she had lots of information about doing that. And we had a pretty good turnout at that event, but I think we got like a $1,500 grant. She didn't charge us anything to do this. It was really just about the venue and having hors d'oeuvres and that kind of stuff there. But we did invite city council members, and we did invite all those people, and not very many of them, unfortunately, attended, and mailman. But the people that did attend were really, it was pretty neat. There's this one group, we have a North Valley Property Owners Association. So that is just what it sounds like. Property owners can belong to this, and it helps them with their landlord rights and with forms and all that kind of stuff. Well, they got involved early on because a lot of the builders were part of that group, and they started having regular meetings to be able to communicate to each other what we were looking at, what needed to happen, and how we needed to get that going. We ourselves don't have a lot of power as far as telling them what to do as far as getting these building permits. And like with any small community, it's difficult to, you can influence, you can't change, you can't do anything except for try to influence and then go there and put the pressure on them in that way. And so for us, that's what we want to do. But a lot of our members are part of those groups. So we had our membership, we had Chamber of Commerce. That's typically who our audience is the leaders really belong to Chamber of Commerce. We work really a lot when we do our events to get them on board. And one of the groups that did attend that I was really excited about, it's like subgroup of that North Valley Property Owners Association. Now it's a standalone. It's called the Rebuild Paradise Foundation. And one of the guys, Charles Brooks, who was executive director of that, he came to that event. And he and one of the people that's part of the North Valley Property Owners Association spent a lot of time talking to Kate afterwards, and they've been working on, I'm not sure if they've done it yet, but they were working on getting her up there to try to influence. Probably one of the best messages, am I okay? Is this what you want to talk about? Okay, so one of the best messages that she had, and she had one, I wish I could remember the town. I was trying to get a hold of her today to see if I could get that information. There was a town like in Iowa or something that got blown off the map. Huge, tornado or something came through and just leveled it. And they're like, it's never coming back. They don't, all their businesses are gone. There's no revenue. It's like, just the same kind of thing that happened in Paradise. And what they did is, instead of just trying to rebuild the same old community, they decided to make it a real example of smart, sustainable growth. And for me, that was really exciting to hear that, because you have this fresh start, and that if you could do anything you wanted in your community, there's things that block your way. Like, you have certain buildings are already there, or like with Paradise, we want to have a town center. We never really had that. This community became like top of the line in their education, their transportation corridors. Like, they really did a lot of work, and that was inspiring. But one of the examples that she brought up that really stuck with me, because I know the area well, is San Francisco. And prior to the 89 earthquake, there was a lot of talk with the planners of the city and county of San Francisco into changing over this area that's the Embarcadero. It's like there was a freeway going over it. It's right at the water's edge. It wasn't particularly attractive. It was just a lot of the piers out there with commercial offloading kind of a thing. And they always thought that that would be a possibility. And indeed, they were trying to change it because they could bring in revenue if they could just flip that area into more of a commerce area. Well, they could never agree, and the money to take down the Embarcadero Freeway that went right over that part was just too much of a roadblock until the 89 earthquake, when it got knocked down. And they were like, we're not putting it back up, we're going to go a different way. And they did. And now that area is, it adds a lot to their revenue for their city and their county, because it is a highly visited commercial area. So those are the kinds of things that we were excited about. Not that we were going to be San Francisco, but if we could, in some small way, not even that, if we could start thinking that way from the get-go on how do we want to do this to make our community better, obviously for fire evacuations, but also for the other things that make a community desirable, because people have told us, you're not going to have water, it's going to cost you, huge amounts of money, way more than the average square foot cost to get it done, because they're going to have so many builders that, they're going to jack up the prices, and then lumber is going to go out, through the roof. And so there were so many things that were holding people back. And then this Rebuild Paradise group, they did a little bit differently. What they were trying to do is, sorry, I lost my thought there. I saw a question pop up about manufactured parks. I'm like, oh, do I know? Anyway, they were trying to encourage people to come back to the Ridge. And the only way to do that, when you're having all those people, like, seriously, coming up to you on the street saying, you must be crazy to ever think about rebuilding in Paradise again, and you're not sure which way to go. It's like, what do? We own the land. We actually have a couple of lots up there. I mean, that's where our jobs were. So it was really nice. That's how they've done it. They've done some videos of people coming back in to encourage. And, now we've got, we have 782 stick-built homes already up there, and 395 manufactured homes have been put up there, and they have 1,092 building permits. And the interesting thing is, and this happened to Santa Rosa as well, at the mark of a year, people would start saying, well, look, it's been a year and you have very few homes that are rebuilt. Well, the big part of that year is getting all the cleanup done. I mean, you have toxic waste everywhere, that melted glass and fiber. It's just a mess. It takes a long time to get that. And then there's the dead trees, so it takes a long time. We got our building permit, and we were breaking ground a year ago this month, and our house was done probably 3 months ago. So it took a long time to get through the, the city's just not, the town, in our case, the town was not really ready. They had to get ready quickly. And going through the permit process and figuring out how they wanted to do it, what they were going to allow, and then working with the local legislators, the assemblyman and the senator from this area, working on trying to streamline things and help them allow what they could allow, and credits where they could get credits. And we did benefit from some of those, although I'd be hard pressed to name exactly how that works, because it's all kind of mysterious as you're going through it. It's not an easy process, rebuilding. And but I'll tell you one thing that's been really nice for me now that we're getting back up there, and we're doing our move back very, very slowly, is that everything up there is new. And we've got, like, our internet service is going to be faster than anything else around here. And that was an area that struggled a lot. But Comcast, AT&T, they all got in there, and there's fiber optic cable up there now. And in fact, we're doing that today. We're getting our internet connected up there today. So those things have already shown improvement. And then the fact that we had a lot, Paradise is a very old town, gold rush town, one of the largest nuggets in California was found up there. And so there were a lot of little homes that were just like barely legal in some respects. I think they were so old, they didn't have a lot of other things. So unfortunately, a lot of those people that lost their homes, we don't know if they're going to be able to come back, because they didn't have the insurance to be able to do that. And the building is pretty expensive, although we did pretty well on ours. But there's a lot of barriers. And now they'll allow manufactured homes 10 years old. They have to be within 10 years. Well, people are pretty much going out, but they're buying brand new homes. So, and those are nice, and they're better built. And so, right now we have more stick built than manufactured homes. There was a lot of that in Paradise. We have a lot of senior manufactured home parks. It was tragic, really. Santa Rosa had one of those too. So I was just checking to see if I've covered things here. So the manufactured home parks, the question from Colleen is, we lost 4 manufactured home parks, primarily with seniors. We did have several that were destroyed. And I've heard a lot of those places are being sold. There's people that are like, they're out of it. They did it as a business, and then they don't have the heart to go back through it. I don't know what their status is right now. We see a lot of manufactured homes going up there, but I haven't seen a park come back yet. And then let's see. Oh, well, that's okay. How does selling a home, even if it's a new build, work as far as disclosing that it was previously in a FEMA disaster area. They obviously have to, state that it was in a disaster area, but probably one of the more interesting things about that is the whole debris removal, like how you do that. And I don't understand, I'm not a realtor, so I know that for those that are selling land, they have to do a couple of things. One, they have to do a survey, because a lot of the properties up in Paradise were so old and the marks had been gone for a long time ago. And then people had put up, their idea of where their property line was, and Paradise decided what they really wanted everyone to do is get their property surveyed again. And that, everything that happens, it's like if you're the first one in and you can find somebody that'll do it reasonably, and then a lot of other people come in and all of a sudden it becomes really expensive to do. And it's a mandatory before you even submit your plans that you have a survey on the property. And that was difficult, but eventually it's interesting the way that communities pull together and start sharing information. We had several Facebook groups for campfire survivors and Paradise Strong and all those different sites that Facebook has, and quickly it narrowed down to a few that were really informative, and we could quickly share that information, that this is what you're going to need to do and this is probably a good way to do it. Or I found that we started sharing information with each other, and that was probably, we did have Rebuild Paradise Foundation that was helping us, and we did have the local associations and the chamber getting us information, but it seemed like everybody's on a different wavelengths as how they get their information, and those sites proved to be invaluable for those of us that actually lost. We can check things out. But having said that, they can be wrong oftentimes. And so people start sharing information and you have to check things out. So let's see, Curtis Johnson's question above. Let me see if I can get over here. I want to answer your questions. I know that I'm hoping to help you guys out. Do you see that one? The question from, oh, you're muted.
Yeah, that one was about infrastructure.
Oh, here it is. Each fire is different, but in the case of the fast moving fire in Paradise, was the infrastructure left intact? No, it was not left intact. So the Paradise had its own private water system, and that was the first thing that people kept saying, you're never going to go back because all the water pipes have melted and now the water's toxic, and we're not sure how that's going to continue in the future. So those, in the early days, those things were talked about, like how are we going to do that? We have Paradise Irrigation District, like I said, a private one, it's small. They got on it and they started repairing all the lateral lines, and ours, how they did it is if you got a building permit, they focused on that area. And so in our little area where we decided to rebuild, which is on a different lot than we lost in the fire, there were 4 homes being rebuilt. And so they hit our street fairly early on, and we got our water lines in. And then septic. So unfortunately, Paradise, because it's on the ridge, we had nothing but septics. It never converted to any kind of public sewer at all. So those were really scary because septics are so hard to replace, and the PG&E came in and started falling trees, and they get dropped on the septics, and then the septics would have to, then you had to file a lawsuit to PG&E, so they replaced it for having done that. It was not easy, and you didn't want that to happen. Now, one of the things that did come along fairly early on was PG&E wants to put the lines in Paradise underground. Well, they have the opportunity, and so there's been a lot of trenching going on. They may make the commercial area on a sewer system. I don't think that's definite at this point in time, although we've seen some construction going on. And then the PG&E going underground, we're already seeing evidence of that. And so as we built our home, we did a trench and then sweeps in that so that they could all just connect. And some of those are more successful. You try to manage so that you can get those things in. And some are good, some you make and some you don't. It's like there's nothing easy or for the faint of heart when it comes to rebuilding. But one thing that we feel really good about is the people that want to be there have a commitment to being there and really want to see the community get better. And so that's good. And we do. I mean, we have quite a few now people living up there, starting to feel like the community again. And then I saw a question about who was the speaker from Sacramento. Her name is Kate Meese. You can look it up on the Local Government Commission. There's a website, I'll give that to Jeremy. And she was brilliant. I mean, she's such a top notch. Like we were humbled that she would agree to come and speak with Paradise. But she really believes in sustainability, and she really believes that you have an opportunity when you lose this much to really do things in a better way. And she's like she's so well spoken and knows so much about so many things. I can see, needing to have her back again to talk to some group, maybe not maybe not in that format, but definitely to Paradise to talk about what's going on up there.
Well, yeah, I imagine that now that your community has been down the road a ways, there are probably other individuals also emerging as real experts in rebuilding after a disaster like this. And so are there other names of individuals? And we'll and we can chat afterwards.
Yeah,
and
no, I would highly recommend Charles Brooks from the Rebuild Paradise group. He's been to all those planning meetings and trying to help regrow Paradise. And I think there's a similar one for Santa Rosa that has been through it. And there's probably some others, but I would recommend Charles Brooks, because in that situation, and I know, what's your town's Phoenix, which I love the name of it. It breaks my heart because those pictures look a lot like our town did right after, just like block upon block of devastation. And the other name's Phoenix. We came up with that Phoenix project when ours was for obvious reasons. Breaks my heart for them. But communities like that could benefit from hearing how that group got set up, may be able to streamline it and do it a little quicker.
Great. Yeah. And we can, just so everyone knows, we'll put resources on the website of names of individuals that could help with this. So we'll stay in touch with Ellie and get that information so that you all can access it if you wanted to host an event in your community. We don't have a ton of time left, so I just do want to talk a little bit about, just for those on the webinar who are not that familiar with the grants that NAR has to bring in speakers or put together community type meetings. So Ellie's grant was a Smart Growth grant.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the Housing Opportunity Grant. Mm-hmm. And while neither of these, and there's others as well. There's a placemaking grant, and then there's the land use initiative as well, which can help with crafting kind of model policies. And it sounds like there's some things to be learned from the Paradise situation relative to what kind of policies can help streamline development. I know that's something that Oregon legislators and local officials are already thinking about.
Yeah.
So those community outreach programs, I put the link in the chat box. But those are grants that usually provide somewhere between $1,500 to $10,000 and are for community events where you're bringing in other partners and stakeholders to talk about how you're going to grow your community or how you're going to address your community's housing needs. And while they're not specific to wildfires, obviously those needs of planning for growth and planning for housing are highly relevant to the aftermath of a fire. So we encourage you to try to apply for those. And Ellie, I don't know if you want to share any of your experience about how hard or easy it was to get that grant.
It was so easy. Like I said, like Hugh Morris, if you're a small association and you haven't called to talk to him about what they might be able to do, I recommend it. He's a great, great man. And he's helped us. Like, there were a couple of things that we wanted to do, because this is the charter of NAR. Like, we want to be the voice of real estate. We want to be out there in the front. And some of us that are small, it's difficult to do those things. And you don't need a lot. Like I said, Kate Meese didn't charge us anything to come. So it was really just the venue and the food, and again, we got a PA system, and so $1,500 covered a lot for us here. It doesn't sound like much, but we didn't need a lot just to get that message out, and to have community. They're desperate for information on how other communities do it, and I think as we get more and more communities, I'm hoping there's more and more resources for us that other communities will be sharing how they did it and positive things that they did. Now that we're going to be back up in Paradise here pretty soon full time, and then it'll be a lot easier for me to connect with those groups. It's not the easiest, to work full time and go to meetings at night, but we have stayed out in front of it. But we will definitely have some information to share as this goes on. This is, It can be done. I can tell you right now, the people that are going up there are really enthusiastic about the community, and we know it's not going to be the same probably in my lifetime, but it feels good to be part of something like that, and to do it I mean, we have this opportunity, so we're excited about being able to help other communities right from the get-go.
So I want to turn it back to Michael, but first, just one last question for me is, obviously, and you've talked about the fact that, there's a lot of other groups. There's the chamber. In this case, there was a foundation that popped up to specifically deal with rebuilding. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about sort of how you see the Realtor Association role in that landscape, broader organizations, and how to connect with all that?
Yeah, for us, it's like, we're housing. That's what we do. And that's the number one thing when people lose their homes. That's what's happening. That's at the core of it. They're losing their homes. And so we felt like there really was a role for us to play. And my agents, just like your agents, like right now they're going out there and they're trying to find places for people to live. But then you start looking at the stats, and I know that probably Oregon Association of Realtors has started looking at that. I know I was working with Oscar Way at CAR, and we were trying to look at it because the community, because of where Paradise was and how the people evacuated, like trying to find homes for that many people, we had a housing shortage anyway. And then you throw that into the mix, and people are like desperately looking for homes, and the prices are going up. The biggest thing after fire is housing. And we felt like we have to get out there and be part of this, and at least start conversations, at least be part of influencing how that comes about. So it was important to us to be that in our community.
Thanks, Ellie. And I want to turn it back to Michael to close out. But just again, thank you so much for sharing. And just as we're going through this, I realized how many more questions and more information there could be. For example, I think there's a lot to learn about, what local and state policies were passed to help streamline, and whether Oregon could model any of that. But we unfortunately don't have time today, but I hope that this can be an ongoing conversation.
Absolutely. Like sister cities or sister states or something like that, where we're sharing information on how we do this, like coming back strong. So thank you for having me here today. And anybody that's had their house affected by these wildfires, my heart goes out to you. Good luck. And if I can do anything to help, just let me know.
Great. Thanks, Michael. You want to close it out?
Yeah, and Ellie, again, thanks. That was a lot of good information, and I think it does bring up a lot of questions. I think, one thing Jeremy just kind of touched on is trying to reach out to the cities and for permitting. I mean, just, if there's some things that can streamline that. So I think I was trying to watch the questions too. I believe
I was looking at this question on
there's one last one, and I don't know if we could answer that, but what kind of temporary housing was made available so that not everybody left the community?
Yeah, they did FEMA brought in trailers, and you can imagine it's like the NIMBY, not in my backyard. They'd say, we're going to put these trailer units over here, and then people would get upset, and then they'd move them here. But it's the U.S. government, so they could just figure out where they wanted to be. That was an interesting thing. It wasn't the greatest. They did allow in Paradise people to take their own motorhomes. A lot of insurances, their additional living expense in the beginning was just buy a motorhome and go park it somewhere. And so there was a lot of that going on. And then Paradise allowed people to bring one of those trailers up and live on their property, but it was subject to, you had to be going for a building permit. And at the end of this year, this is coming up right now, at the end of this year, it expires. And there are people that they didn't have insurance to rebuild. They don't know where they're going to go. It's really a tragic story. And that comes to an end this year. So that's big in our news right now, is what next for these people. It's hard just to say, well, sorry, it didn't work out for you. You have to go find another place to live. This is their state. And now they're not sure if they are welcome to stay. And that's a really hard thing.
Yeah. So the impact is obviously still going to continue for quite a while.
Oh, our inventory has been horrible. What we did get a lot of, we've probably benefited from this one, a lot of people that said, we just want to get out of California and all the taxes. So we're going to move. So we're going to sell our home to one of these campfire survivors at $100,000 more what it would have sold a month ago. And then we're going to move. And so we had a lot of that. And then people got into homes that were overpriced. And then It was really hard. Like they had to do an advisory for every sale saying, you know, this is a market condition advisory. We don't know if this is going to stay. And so we were dealing a lot with our agents going to make sure and do that because you don't know what the market's going to be. And indeed, we had people that bought houses and then 6 months later said, I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't want to live here. So, yeah.
Well, again, Ellie, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. A lot of good
Pleasure.
information and probably brought up just as many questions as it did answers, but that's great. So, okay, well, I want to appreciate everybody joining us that did. I think we had a pretty good turnout. So unless you have anything else, Jeremy, I guess we'll close it out.
This was recorded, so we'll make the recording available so those who couldn't attend, or if you want to watch it again to catch some things you didn't catch, that'll be available.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Have a safe day.